Have you noticed this too lately? Seems like every time I turn on the news, bang, another plane crash.
Yeah.
Or, some scary near miss.
Yeah,
It's a little unsettling, right? Makes you think twice about that next flight.
for sure.
Well, today, we are going deep on this.
Yeah.
We're going to look at some research, some actual data, and maybe challenge that perception a bit.
Sounds good.
So let's dive right in.
Okay.
This is one of those topics that I find so interesting because, we're constantly bombarded with these news stories about these incidents.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's just getting worse, right?
Yeah, totally. And it plays on our fears for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
The data actually tells a very different story.
It really does. So despite these, sort of gut feelings that we get from these news stories, when we actually look at the statistics, air travel is safer than it's ever been.
It's wild.
It's statistically one of the safest ways to travel.
So we've got this weird disconnect. We feel like it's getting riskier, but the numbers say, nope, actually getting safer.
Exactly.
So what's the deal? What's going on in our brains that creates this?
Well, a lot of it, and this is something that affects our thinking in a lot of areas, is something called availability bias.
Okay, tell me about that.
So availability bias essentially means that, we tend to judge the likelihood of something happening based on how easily we can recall examples of it. So for example, if you've just watched a really scary shark movie,
Oh, yeah.
you're probably gonna way overestimate the chances of being attacked at the beach, right?
Right.
Even though statistically, shark attacks are incredibly rare.
Totally.
Mm.
Sense. So relating that back to flying then, plane crashes, they're these massive events, tons of coverage, very emotionally charged, very vivid in our memories.
Absolutely.
So they stick with us.
They do. They really do.
And we tend to overestimate how often they actually occur.
Yeah. It feels like they're happening all the time because those are the ones that we remember.
Okay, but hold on a second. If these things are actually happening less often, shouldn't we be seeing less coverage of them?
That's a great point.
Not more.
You would think so.
So what's the deal with that?
Well, here's the thing. The 24/7 news cycle and social media, they thrive on drama. They thrive on, things that are really going to grab our attention.
Clickbait.
Exactly. Clickbait. Bad news, it's dramatic, it's shareable, it gets those clicks, So even if the actual number of these incidents is going down, the coverage might actually be increasing, which just feeds into this availability bias even more.
So even if you're statistically more likely to get into a car accident
Right.
than a plane crash, you're constantly seeing these images, these stories, these headlines about plane crashes.
Exactly.
And it just skews our perception.
It really does.
And to really hit that point home, there was some research that I saw where they actually looked at the amount of coverage that different types of accidents get
Oh, wow.
compared to how often they actually happen.
Yeah.
And one study found that car accidents, which cause, thousands more fatalities every year than plane crashes, they get almost 10 times less media coverage.
Oh, wow.
10 times. So we're talking about massive discrepancy.
Huge. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've kind of nailed down the whole availability bias thing and how that plays into it. But let's step back from that for a second and just think about the whole experience of flying, right?
Yeah.
Even if we understand that the risk is statistically low, it still feels kind of scary for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Think about it. You're thousands of feet up in the air. You're hurtling through the sky at hundreds of miles an hour, and you have absolutely zero control.
Right.
You're just strapped into this metal tube.
Toe tube, yeah.
And I think that lack of control, that really taps into some pretty primal fears.
It does. Deep down, we want to be in control, right?
Yeah.
And when you're flying, you're completely surrendering that control
Totally.
to someone you don't even know.
Yeah, and not to mention, if something does go wrong, we're not talking about a fender bender here.
Right.
We're talking about a potentially catastrophic event
Yeah.
with, a significant loss of life.
Exactly.
So it's like this perfect storm of height, speed, lack of control, and the potential for, just really, really bad outcomes.
Right.
And I think that creates this sense of anxiety, even if, logically we understand that it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah. The odds are in your favor, but, it's hard to ignore those feelings.
So what do we do with all of this information? Let's say you're listening to this right now and you've got a flight coming up and you're starting to feel that pre-flight anxiety creep in.
Uh-huh.
What do you do?
Well, first of all, just being aware of this availability bias, recognizing that your feelings might be influenced by what you're seeing in the media, that can actually help you take a step back and sort of look at the situation more objectively. Remind yourself that, statistically, air travel really is one of the safest modes of transportation.
So knowledge is power.
It really is. In this case, it can be very calming.
But what if even with that knowledge, those feelings persist? What do you do then?
I think it's about managing those feelings. If you're really struggling with anxiety, do your research, look at the data. Focus on the fact that, airlines and pilots, they undergo incredibly rigorous training and safety procedures. And if it helps, talk to someone about your fears. Maybe a therapist, maybe a friend who's a frequent flyer, but don't let those feelings control you.
Awesome. Thank you. This has been really insightful. And I think it just goes to show how much our own minds can shape our perception of the world, even when it comes to something that we think of as being objective, like risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it goes beyond just flying, right? I mean, think about how this bias might affect your perceptions of other things, like crime rates or political events or even health risks.
Totally. We see it everywhere.
It's this powerful force that can really shape our decisions, our actions, if we're not aware of it.
Absolutely. It's like this hidden hand guiding our thoughts.
So here's something to ponder as you go about your day. What other areas of your life might be influenced by availability bias? What feelings or beliefs do you hold that might not be entirely supported by the facts? It's a thought-provoking question, and one that can lead to some really fascinating self-discoveries.
It really can. It's always good to question our assumptions.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.